Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast, the only podcast, at least that I know, that takes a white dude from Arkansas and a black dude from California and sits us down weekly to talk about gold, guns, and god awful government. As always, we are a proud member here on the Black Powder Podcast of the Firearms Radio Network. We'd like to thank our Firearms Radio Network friends for allowing us to continue to spread the message of liberty. Uh,
Yes.
I'm always joined by my melanated brother in arms, Mr. Marcus Matthews, going tonight as Marcus Matthews, the libertarian Mac Daddy. Marcus, I think that's a little low effort, man. Yeah, I
I
think it's a
struggled.
little. I think it's a little low effort on the
I
nickname tonight.
struggled today. I struggled because the last one was so great. This was like a sophomore album from Coldplay or something like that. It just didn't hit the mark today. But I ask you to bear with me. And while you bear with me, I ask you to go visit our good friends at the Common Arms Trade Company. And with any order over $100, you get 10% off using the code Black Powder, all one word.
Black powder, all one word. Yeah, I mean, Marcus, I was still checking out Common Arms site, and it's anybody listening, check out Common Arms Trade Company, and also follow them on Facebook. That guy puts up good content,
Yes.
good memes, which is important. If anyone's watching the live stream and not just listening, I'm sitting tonight in my wife's beautiful office, which I put together and built for her. She has a very nice pink chair, and I put some decals on the wall, and there's a picture of our old dog. So we're going to soften the edges on the Black Powder podcast tonight a little bit for you guys. So, as
Yeah.
always, we try to bring you guests that bring the message of liberty because we believe that liberty is the ultimate freedom, that without it, you don't have anything at all. And so, we're doing some follow up stuff. We have a Chase Oliver on. We've had Lars Mapstead,
Lars, yes.
Lars Mapstead, and then now we have Mike Termott on again for 2.0. Mr. Termott, welcome back to the Black Powder Podcast for your second appearance.
Oh my goodness, it's just a great joy to be with you all. I appreciate the fake laugh track. Is that pronounced Mac Daddy or is that all one word like black powder? Is it Mick Daddy?
I,
I
I
thought
don't
you
want
were
to go
going
back
with
to.
Tina Turner fan today.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I heard the
yeah.
news. Yeah.
That was sad. I love Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. That's one of my favorite movies ever. I think I've quoted
That is
it.
a culturally important
It
event.
is.
That's an important film.
It is. It actually is part of the reason I own firearms because I see myself as a nuclear wasteland survivor,
Yeah.
and
No, definitely.
yeah.
Master Blaster.
As a matter
Damn
of
it! I should
fact,
have
I
did
think
that
I
one.
recognize
That is
some of the
literally my
scenes.
email.
I think I recognize some of the scenes from the movie from your part of California. That's what California is going to look like in another 20 years,
Well, what do you
whether
mean
we have a
20 years?
nuclear
I mean,
meltdown or not.
that was more like yesterday. I mean, I was just talking about how this lady who was a homeless advocate, and it's not a funny story, but it's more irony. But she was a homeless advocate, and she was doing something on the street, and there was so many tents and whatnot on the sidewalk. She stepped off the curb because she couldn't pass on the sidewalk, and she got hit by a car.
Oh
Man,
no, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
but I'm not making light of her tragic
No,
event, but that's how bad
that's how
it's
bad
gotten.
things have gotten.
Yeah, and I was recently in New York, and their homeless people have the common decency to smoke their crack, um, out in the open, but out of the way, so you could walk past them, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't take up the whole sidewalk.
Well, that's New York. New Yorkers have always been a crowd that looks out for each other and has
Yeah,
respect for their space. So, I'm not completely surprised.
yeah, and there
The
was no tents.
designated crack
Marcus,
smoking
who
areas.
runs Bartertown?
Uh, um,
Master Blaster runs
Master Blaster
Bartertown.
runs
Blaster, dang
Bartertown.
it!
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know why that escaped me. I enjoyed the '90s, so I like to default to
Bust a
that.
deal, spin the wheel.
Yes,
Yeah.
2 men in, 1 man out.
yes.
There's a part in that
Walking,
movie where I
walking.
recently watched it again, and that movie's pretty well put together and has some good continuity. I mean, I say that, but then there's a part of it that gets really weird, like during the duel between Mel Gibson's character and the other guy, like, the
The
Master Blaster.
giant Down syndrome guy.
Yeah, then his helmet comes off, and you see that he has Down syndrome, and he's
Yeah,
like,
that was
"He's
terrible.
just a baby. He's a child." It's
Yeah.
really like completely off.
It
Oh,
kind of
it's kind of
ruined
disturbing, isn't
ruined
it?
the
It's kind of
entertainment
sad.
value, and then you had all this empathy. Like, dang, dude, you're really out here fighting this guy, man. Look at you.
No, it's
look
terrible.
look what you've become.
Look
But
what
it
you-
makes you hate Master even more when you find
Yes.
out the Blaster is so pathetic.
right,
when
and he's been
Yeah.
manipulated into this game.
You hate the Master, the smaller of the two, right?
Well,
Yeah, but he was the only one that knew how to make gas out of pig crap. So
That's why
That's
he
right.
ran Bartertown.
yeah,
that's right.
Because
He-
energy rules Bartertown. And when California learns that, they will take their head out of their Thunderdome and allow markets to work, and they won't have to worry about allocating energy and water. Once Californians figure that out, they can reverse the movement toward becoming a desert wasteland.
yeah.
Mike,
well,
you never
with
cease
that,
to impress
yeah.
with your ability to bring continuity from one thing to another. We're talking about a Mel Gibson movie, and we got like energy policy going on here.
Well, I
Well,
want to ask
in-
about
in
that.
fairness,
I want to expand
I
on the
did-
energy policy thing
I
because
was an adult in the 80s, unlike you guys. So
Yeah.
I got a
why
leg
can't
up
we
on
use
you.
more pig shit to make, excuse my French, but because I'm the all the above energy guy. We
Yeah.
should be looking at everything.
Absolutely. That's the way it has to be.
Yeah, and for us to be wasting animal fecal matter in such a profound fashion when we have plenty of it, because that's where they say all the methane is coming from, that it's causing all
Right.
the. Why aren't we truly harvesting animal crap?
Yeah. You got to save your shit, Marcus. You don't want to waste that. That's what's
There it
stuck
is.
right there.
Marcus,
we-
let's get into the serious questions of the
And
evening.
it's not all of the above, Marcus. From the standpoint of a libertarian, it's any of the above.
Any of the above. I
Any
got
Any
very
of the
good point.
above, because the market will determine yes and no on every single alternative. It's not for us to decide any one particular one, or even to decide that we need all of them.
Yeah.
I do believe that we should be open to all and
Yeah.
open to any, but a couple of the recent technologies that have been subsidized by the government are very likely to go away in the next generation, and that's just too bad.
It
Yeah,
is.
so actually, that's a good point to discuss. I mean, where are you kind of on the future economic outlook? Not necessarily on policy or what a President Maat would say, but just the economist in you. Where are you on the outlook of like the EV quote unquote revolution? The chase for lithium and rare earth metals. Kind of what's Mike Termott's view on that?
We have to let it play out. I think that we get ourselves in trouble when we rush things. And I feel like the government is trying to shove it down our throat before the infrastructure is ready. And we need to let this evolve gracefully. Pressuring these, when these companies make these announcements, like we're not going to produce gas-powered vehicles in a certain time frame, I think that's dumb. There will be people, not just me, who hang on to their gas stove and their Chevy Silverado with 2 dents in the back. I don't know how that happened, by the way. I may hang on to these things for a while, but it's not just because I don't like the new technologies. There are things that speak to the old technologies that are specific, and whether that's infrastructure or your particular situation, the distance you have. I live out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
I am not going to run the risk that my wife gets stuck, late at night with a battery running down and not able to get to the plug-in station that's 40 miles away. That's just not going to happen. I'm one of those guys that rides around with enough gas to run Bartertown in the back of his Silverado because I'm just not going to get stuck in that situation. Right.
Right.
So there are people who feel differently about these things, and therefore you need to let it play out. I do think that we will eventually move toward electric vehicles, but one of the reasons why it has to take a while is that energy is not as cheap as you think it is. In terms of electricity, electricity is produced by and large in this country from fossil fuels.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And if we continue having increasingly bad policy, that price for the cost of energy is not going to come down like some people think it's going to come down.
Also, the rare earths that we need to make the batteries are a finite resource, just as fossil fuels are. This not
It absolutely is,
yeah,
and a lot of it comes from outside the United States.
Right.
precisely. So that's national security right there.
It's a
Because here,
national security issue that you don't
yeah,
want to put in the hands of somebody else. And I also am profoundly uncomfortable with the idea of putting it in the hands of people running in the White House if they're anything like those people who have been in there lately. In
yeah,
other words, I don't like the idea of the Republican protectionist attitude or America First attitude that gets into these trade wars. And I don't like the Democratic administration that leans into government interventionism, military interventionism, that runs the risk of alienating trade partners. And all of a sudden, you can't put the batteries together for the electric vehicles that your government has mandated, and you're in the Michigana all of a sudden. So, for all these reasons, everyone's got to settle the hell down.
right.
We will eventually get there, but you can't rush things.
So that brings up an interesting point. So, the America First strategy obviously was very popular in 2016. Clearly, it was, and typically is a
Good
popular strategy.
marketing.
It's a
Good
good
marketing.
It's a good marketing. Good. Who doesn't want to be first as part of? Who doesn't want to say yes, my team first, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
not being taking the kind of an America First approach and not taking again some sort of protectionist racket for whatever. What's kind of Mike Termott's? What's President Termott's strategy when it comes to trade and energy?
You do you, and we all get rich.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The irony of America First is that it's great marketing, but it doesn't really put America first. It puts politicians first. It's it's
Interesting
based on
point.
19th century technology as far as our understanding of the economy. It's not actually how the economy works. The economy works best when you let people make their own decisions, and sometimes you have to let very large companies that are not popular, very large multinational companies that are particularly unpopular, make better decisions than the Biden administration or the Trump administration would make for them, which is actually not a very high hurdle to clear, come to think of it. But you do need to let these businesses make their own decisions, and that's what drives costs down for Americans, is the incentive for these companies to make big money. And they're the ones that move, large amounts of resources. And sometimes that's oil, and sometimes that's raw materials other than oil. And sometimes it's half-made products. You guys understand as well as anybody the supply chain complexities that we're dealing with. And all of that gets messed up when you try to protect industries in the United States under the rubric of America First, because you think that you're protecting jobs, when in the long run, you're really messing with people's lives. And anyone who has lived in Detroit the last 30 years understands that when you prop up an industry and make it larger than it naturally should be, because you're protecting it, and then all of a sudden that protection falls, or your ability to protect it falls, because the differential in quality versus price coming from some other country just overwhelms the industry that you've been protecting all these years. All of a sudden you go from a city of 1.7 million in Detroit to more like 0.7 million in Detroit, if that. I haven't looked at the numbers lately, so I probably just embarrassed myself. I'm probably off by quite a bit, but that is the primary. There are plenty of others in the United States, owing to not only the automotive industry, but to steel and manufactured products. When we protect these industries and then that protection goes away, you end up with these communities that are just wholly wiped out, that should never have been encouraged to get as big as they were in the first place. Very dangerous stuff.
Can you make that analogy for the United States government?
The United States,
it's propping itself up. It's way too big for its purpose, and it is bound to collapse eventually because it's completely inflating its own worth.
It is that was beautifully said. I think I should just shut up and listen to that in my head 2 more times over instead of trying to talk over it. You're right. The government does accrue power to itself and keeps expanding in terms of size and scope, and in one, monotonically increasing direction at all times. It never peels back in size. The only difference is that when the government is forced to shrink, I will not feel bad about it. Thank you to the scientific libertarian for bailing me out there. I wasn't actually
You're
so
close, but you don't win the Showcase Showdown because you went over by
because I
about.
went over. That's right. So
Yeah.
to heck with that.
Yeah, you don't.
No lawn furniture set for you, Mr.
No.
Jermont.
And
You know,
it's not a good look for a guy with gray hair to say, well, 8 years ago it was 700,000. Like Joe Biden probably doesn't know it's under 2 million yet,
He
right?
said,
He hasn't
what's
gotten
in
the memo
Detroit?
at all.
So, Mike,
So-
that's actually a really good segue into kind of an overreaching umbrella topic. And we have, I think, in any election cycle, we have these kind of overreaching umbrella topics. And one of them is going to be, even though it will be sunset and over by the time we have the 2024 election, it'll be nevertheless part of the debate conversation, which is the debt ceiling. We talk about government being too
let's
large.
hope it's over. Let's
Well,
hope it's over.
It'll be just kicked down the can. You know, the can will be kicked down the road again. That will be what happens. But
Assuming we get an increase in the debt ceiling.
I'm pretty.
Or it
I
could
think
be
that
Barter Town by next May.
I'm pretty sure
I'm
that
ready.
I've seen this enough times that my opinion and my bet is on, what has happened will happen, which is we'll get theatrics, optics division, and then we'll get the same old, same old. People like us are maybe in the minority in that we wake up to the fact that the only two choices that we're being given is this much shit or this much shit, right? Nobody is realistically talking about a plan to end the shit. Okay. Nobody is. And that's what really the American people deserve. So with that kind of
Agreed.
said, Mike, from your economic background,
Yeah.
discuss what the next 10 to 15 years might look like if you could wave a magic wand and direct Congress in a fiscal policy.
And I do have a magic wand, by the way. Everyone is always saying if you had one, and I don't understand that because I absolutely do have one.
Hell yeah.
And I plan on using it next year. If you had a magic wand, you would cap spending. I used to work for the Office of Management and Budget at the White House, and my job was in large part to help the rest of the agency maintain compliance with budget control law. In those days, we had budget control law. It obviously didn't work perfectly and didn't last very long, but we can institute programs similar to that going forward, whereby which if you spend too much, you get an across-the-board haircut across all programs. And politicians hate that idea, but on the other hand, it would alleviate the problem of any particular program really taking it in the shorts badly. So in that sense, it can potentially work pretty well. You got to cap spending because it's the root of all evil. Spending is what drives taxation. It's what drives debt. It's what drives monetization by the Federal Reserve System that we also need to get rid of. We can talk about that later. It's the fundamental problem. Milton Friedman years ago pointed out that all spending is borne by American citizens. There's no such thing as any way to escape it, whether you pay for it by borrowing money or by printing money or by taxing people to cover it. So that's what needs to be done. Unfortunately, we don't have a political appetite for cutting spending. A piece of it is defense, obviously, and both parties have bought into the idea that we need a military able to take down the rest of the world in a battle.
Yeah.
Right. Which is weird. The Defense Department could win a war against the rest of the world, even if our allies were against us. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's too much defense.
Yeah.
And that leads to it being used, which is a huge cost. The cost is not just what you budget for, but what you end up spending because the Defense Department gets used. We spent a couple of $1 trillion more than what was originally budgeted for because of Afghanistan and Iraq, for example. And now the Defense Department is again on the warpath in Ukraine. So that's a piece of it. And another piece of it is discretionary spending that they just, the politicians in the White House just keep agreeing to spend on one year to the next at their discretion. And then the big piece that nobody wants to talk about is what we call mandatory spending, the entitlement programs that are set up in existing law and that people are entitled to because the law exists and they can go to court and petition for it. That is much more politically challenging, yet much more financially important. So we need to go after that. And of course, politicians say that you can't, but not only can you, but you have to. We need an administration willing to say, for example, willing to say Social Security is evil.
Right.
The idea of pushing youngsters into a program in which they're guaranteed to get a crappy return, not even guaranteed to get a positive net return, by the way, right?
No, it's not a positive net
Yeah, not
return
at all.
at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Continue.
Right. Well, certainly if you evaluate it against, by comparing it to what their alternative investment strategy would be, it's clearly underwater. But, even a plus above 0% rate of return, you're not guaranteed that. And there's a lot of reason to believe that youngsters today will not get a positive return going forward because of inflation overrunning it, and because demographics are going the wrong way, where we don't have enough youngsters to pay for the oldsters. So for all these reasons, we've got these problems, right? And we need to be able to say what those problems are. I think that more Americans than ever before are waking up to the idea that a lot of our problems are caused by bad public policy. In that sense, things look and feel a little bit different than they did 30 years ago.
Right.
When our problems, well, and go back, 30 years ago, you look back, and go back 50 years. If you went back to the 70s, the economy didn't look all that different. You had what we called stagflation, where we were heading into a recession, notwithstanding the fact that we had huge inflation. And people did not understand, like most people do today, that bad public policy was behind the whole thing, right? We blamed foreign countries for the oil problems, and we blamed the White House for printing money, whereas people today understand that it's the Federal Reserve's problem. And I think that people are more open today to a more radical pro-reform agenda than they used to be. And I believe that that's the opportunity for us as libertarians going forward, is that we need to be the party that says, no, you can't just elect the next Republican or Democrat, because you're going to get the same old stuff.
Exactly.
And the type of change that we need going forward is really fundamental. It's profound. It's institutional. It's institutional level change.
So when you speak of institutional level change, and you speak of changing the electorate's opinion on these very complicated matters, that again, you can talk about the demographics differences between what is concerning to a senior citizen when it comes to entitled programs and what's concerning to a young person when it comes to entitlement programs. How does President Tremont bridge that gap?
In terms of the complexity?
Sure.
I think you have to be honest with people. I think you have to tell people that is complex, but it is not so complex that the fundamental ethical issues don't come through, because they do. If you explain to people that you are better off making your own decisions, if you're able to explain to people that young people should not be forced into a Social Security program, not only because they ought to have a choice, but because it's a crappy program that gives them a crappy return. So if you're 75 years old, we're not going to take Social Security away from anybody. We're going to have to ride out the system. You've paid into it. It would not be ethical, right, to undermine what the government has promised you all these years while they were ripping you off. At the very least, we have to honor that. My goodness.
Yeah.
But I think that you can go to a 75-year-old and say, yeah, Social Security is complicated. Winding it down is complicated. It's going to be expensive. But do me a favor and think about the ethics of this. Let's not get bogged down in the mathematics. We have, 29-year-old nerdly MBAs to do that.
Right.
Let's talk about the ethics of the situation. Do you really want your children and your grandchildren, and for goodness sake, your great-grandchildren who may not be born yet, forced into these early 20th century programs that may have been well-intentioned, but were put together with really profound design flaws? Is that really what you want your future to look like?
Do you really want your children today paying for your retirement today? Do you really want your grandchildren today?
It's a Ponzi scheme.
It is. If payroll taxes ceased tomorrow, it would be broke in a year and a half, 2 years. It literally is a Ponzi scheme. It is the working class American that is supporting the retired American. And that's
Well,
what's happening,
I just want to interject one point. If I don't get my damn money, this cold revolutionary war that we're having right now is going to
It's gonna
turn
get
hot.
hot real quick.
It's going to get hot
Marcus,
real quick
you've heard it here
because
on the Black Powder Podcast. Marcus single-handedly is kicking it off, man. Shot
Well,
heard around the
remember
world.
that the Democrats would tell you that words are violence. So let's
Yeah.
just say that's as violent as we're going to get is
Yeah.
I must
slinging
be a
nasty words
Visigoth
at each
then.
other.
He said, if I don't get my damn money.
No, I hear you.
I'm
We're
just-
not taking Marcus's money away.
I've
But
been
we are
working
going to
since
give
I was
him an
16 years old.
option.
Yeah.
Now, Marcus is a relatively young man.
Michael's younger than me, but I don't like to admit that on the podcast because
I
black don't
understand.
crack.
You
And
don't
I
have
do.
to. I think it's obvious.
Yeah.
Marcus is a young man. We're going to give him an option to take his money going forward and invest it in something that makes more sense. Now, the Democrats are probably going to come back and say, we're not agreeing for that unless there's a rule that says you have to put it into an IRA. You have to invest it in something. And I think that that's a good compromise for the moment. That's not where we want to go in the long run. In the long run, we want no rules at all about what you do with your own damned money. You should be able to do what you want with it. But I do believe that there's going to be a phase out and there's going to be compromise along the way to get there. So we'll probably have to compromise in round one at phasing Marcus out of the program by giving him an option. He can stay in the program if he wants. If he's drunk when the form arrives in the mail, he checks the wrong box. He can stay in the program if he wants to. But we want to give him an option to put it somewhere else.
So
and
what
that's
I'm
how
getting,
you go after that.
Yeah, what I'm getting from both of you is you don't trust the government with your money. Am I in the ballpark?
Yeah.
I don't even trust the government with your money, much less my money.
I don't trust with your money, Marcus. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I truly do. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
So not really a question for Mr. Tremont tonight, but I've been trying to research something for a while, and Mike, you might know how to get this answer, and somebody listening might know. We know what the Medicare total budget is, roughly $1.5 trillion. Okay, I have been trying to arrive at the actual number of annual claims payments that Medicare as a program makes to providers, because if we had that number, right, we would know definitively what cost is associated with paying benefit and what cost is associated with program administration. And when I tell you that finding that number has been it's impossible to me so far.
I think it's very difficult to know by design, because they want to keep up the narrative that says they administer it much more cheaply than insurance companies do.
Yeah, if they did, there would be a report that says, hey, Medicare paid out $1 trillion in claims. We have a $1.5 trillion budget. We know then that the administrative cost of the program is $500 billion. And that's something that we could politically talk about cutting, and at least in the immediacy term. But when you start looking at this, especially on a state by state basis, and how the program gets administered and how states play shell games with that money, it might go here and they do this and they do this and they do this and then they do this with it. It's almost impossible. And like you said, Mike, I believe it's by design. And, that's not a good government policy at all. Clearly.
No, it's not a good policy. And it reminds me of Social Security in the sense that it operates similarly. There's a trust fund. You have to participate. You don't get a good rate of return in the long run. And we need competition. In that case, there's a couple of things that you can do along the way to getting rid of it. One is you allow each state's program to compete in every other state.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you've got 50 nationwide programs competing for your business. The other thing you do is you allow states to contract it out, to subcontract it to private insurance companies or private anybody who can handle the administration of it. And so this is a stepping stone toward getting real robust competition in there so that you have plans that are different competing for your business. It's the one thing that Obamacare envisioned correctly, is that competition would be a good thing. unfortunately, they set up all these rules that precluded honest competition, and it was a real disaster. But it is true that you want competition. And of course, what you also want to do is impose on care providers disclosure of cost, disclosure of pricing, and uniform pricing. You're not allowed to gouge customers by charging something exorbitant and then dealing with an insurance company behind everyone's back to give them a deep discount just because the insurance company has you by the shorts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, you bring up something, libertarians like us, I think, that are politically minded at least, are always talking about ideas that can be unifying. And transparency in government is a unifying concept.
Right.
I have never met someone politically well-intentioned that is against transparency. Pull that last comment up, Marcus, because that was a good one from Scientific. Time to piss off Marcus. Total spent on COVID.
Pretty easy to do.
Big number, 14. You keep on going.
14 trillion.
Okay, divided by each adult, $54,000, 775 cents. 54.
Where's my damn 54,000?
Yeah. I'm having some brain shortage tonight. So $55,000 per citizen, right? I don't know. I don't know a single person, a single adult that can say that they had $55,000 worth of benefit from the CARES Act and subsequent acts of stimulus that occurred from it.
No, because a lot of that money went to the states and they spent it on whatever they wanted to spend it on.
We're doing it here. So again, in Arkansas right now, we have this big LEARNS Act, which is basically a school choice program that really is maybe not, and funded under an emergency declaration. And then to fund it now, CARES money is being used for it. It's all just kind of a shell game. But I like that he brought that up about, hey, look how much money we spent here on this. COVIDmoneytracker.org. Scientific, thank you for that comment. Scientific and I don't always agree on everything, but I do like the fact that Scientific,
Michael, nobody always agrees with you on everything.
I like the fact that he drops facts, and I really do.
His fault.
I blame Michael too, and the pink chair.
Exactly.
That's why my brain's not working.
That dude's got numbers. I'm trusting the guy with the numbers.
I tell you what, Scientific will bring receipts to his arguments, and that is one thing I really respect about him. So if you're listening, follow Scientific Libertarian on Facebook. He's got good content. So nice little shout out to him. So
well,
Mike,
I want to show this comment from earlier. I don't know if this guy's still on, but
who is he? Okay, fair enough. So, Mike, we know who you are.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? What the hell is going on here?
Yeah, in the information age, I think there are stupid questions now.
Here, let me Google that for you.
Yeah, because when we grew up, they were saying there are no stupid questions. Now there are stupid questions. I even told my kids, you should never ask me like random questions. We should have random discussions after you look it up.
That is a good question. I'll tell you why it's a good question before I tell you the answer.
Go ahead.
That person may know the answer. They just want me to talk about myself.
I don't mind either.
By the way, brother. John Stark is a code name that my mother uses. All right, she goes on these shows and she's like, have him talk about himself.
Thank you, Mama.
Well, Mom, I was born in Portland, Oregon in 1961. Nice. I don't know. What do you want to know?
Yeah, so
what's going on right now?
Yeah, Mike, again, give us the real quick elevator pitch of how you got here, why you chose to run for a possible presidential nomination here in the LP. Kind of, give us the backstory again. That's a good refresher.
Oh boy, this will be the worst 2 minutes of your program. So let's see if we can pick up the pace here and make our way through it. I don't know if I should work backwards or forwards. Let's go
backwards.
Let's go backwards.
Yeah.
Today, I've been running for president to earn the nomination of the Libertarian Party for almost a year. We announced in Reno because I had very little name recognition. I had run for Congress in Florida's District 20, spent a lot of time with the, hello to my Broward County friends. I spent a lot of time with the Broward County Libertarian Party, a wonderful group and a real robust group. And one of the things that we discovered is that people enjoy campaigning if they believe in the cause, right? So we use the congressional campaign to help expand the Broward County Libertarian Party. And then once I got done with that, Another a young woman, Mercedes Marassi, ran for the school board down there. Damn near won, by the way, which was very exciting. And the group rallied around that. And I think one of the things that I would recommend to any county affiliate type people who are listening, who participate in the Libertarian Party, it is campaign as many, in many places as you can, get as many candidates as you can. Consider running yourself. You can do it. You are going to get your ass kicked. There is no higher calling than running for office as a libertarian, knowing you're going to get, thoroughly just thumped, and you do it anyway for the sake of spreading the message. You're going to stand at a lot of Walmart parking lots and knock on a lot of doors. You're going to have a lot of wonderful conversations. You're going to teach people how to spell the word libertarian and what it means. It's going to challenge you. It's going to challenge how you feel about things. And it's all good. It's a really wonderful experience. Before that, I spent 11 and a half years as a police officer in Broward County from the age of 49 to 60 until about 18 months ago. I was on the road the entire time. I was a training officer. It was a wonderful experience. I was a registered libertarian either around the time or just before I became a cop, but I was a libertarian that whole time. So as you might imagine, that leads to some interesting conversations, and we can talk about criminal justice reform and police reform. I spent a lot of time talking about police reform, especially lately, because I think it's a very important issue, and I think it's a little bit easier for me to talk about it than for a lot of other people. I'm not a Democrat who's just anti-cop, hate all the cops all the time, nor am I a foolish Republican who says, as the Senate candidate in the last cycle did, which I thought was kind of dumb, support cops all the time, every case, no matter what, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, I'm a cop myself, and I don't say anything that dumb. We don't see anything that dumb in roll call, right? Much less as a matter of public policy. That's just silly stuff. So I spent a lot of time talking about that and criminal justice reform in general, and not just getting rid of the war on drugs, which is so important, a completely counterproductive set of policies, but the other elements of criminal justice reform as well. It's a big ball of wax and as important as anything. And even though it's not a presidential issue per se, I do believe that presidential candidates and presidents can move the debate, move the conversation in the right direction. And we need to start moving more people along in that direction. Cops are much more open to reform ideas than they were 10 years ago, for example. We are going in the right direction, but it's slow. Any cultural change is necessarily going to be slow, but we need to stay at it. And before age 49, I was a professional economist for 25 years, for a long time. I taught economics at 3 different universities. I had my own business with a partner of mine in the business of educating financial services professionals, running events, and what we used to call in those days webinars. Do you guys remember that? We used to call them webinars.
Yeah. I'm in the IT industry. They kind of still do webinars.
Yeah. I'm going to interject and find out. I found out something new the other day. It's no longer called a PowerPoint. It's called a slide deck now, by the way. I don't know if y'all know that.
It's the same thing.
I know. That's what I said. I said, it's the same thing. And they're like, no, we're using this word now. Like at some point in time, resume turned into CV. And apparently, I'm like,
This is why I hate millennials and Gen Z right here. They're changing all of our good old-fashioned PowerPoints.
Well, it is ridiculous, Marcus. And I think one of the things that strikes me as even funnier, and my daughter does it. She's a professional consultant in Washington, D.C., and very smart, which is why a lot of people believe she's not my biological daughter. She's very talented. She calls slide deck. And I think one of the funniest ironies is the youngsters don't realize that they used to be decks of slides.
Actually, slides. Yes, exactly.
Yes, and we used to carry them in sleeves.
And those carousels and sit them down. Yes.
In the carousel, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Or stacked up in a cardboard box like cards.
Yeah.
And so it was like a deck.
Everything just keeps on going.
They have no idea, right? Everything just goes around.
Yeah.
So,
well, as you know, not to, because it's slightly more somber, But today was the 1 year. Speaking of police officers, today was the 1 year anniversary of Uvalde.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to get your opinion. First of all, being in a law enforcement background, why does it take 1 year for them to admit they effed up? And secondly, what kind of training could those guys apparently they didn't have, where they're going to sit back and listen to gunshots?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. I think it's a hard thing to answer, and it gets really, really personal. So the first thing I should hasten to add is I don't know. I mean, I'm going to, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to pretend like I do know, right?
Okay.
So I should start out by saying that we can't perfectly know the answer to some of these questions.
Right.
No more than you can know with certainty why a guy does go into a room when there's shots being fired. I mean, at some, you know, there are emotions that run through the human body that some people are better able to control than other people.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is what you just put your finger on. A big part of that is training.
Right.
I know that for the entire time, I shouldn't say not the entire time, because it wasn't for the first couple of years, but by my third or fourth year, so I want to say 2014, we were heavily into preparing for active shooter scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely remember, this may be more than what you're asking for, but I think it speaks to some of your questions. The first time that I was trained in it was before most of the other guys in my department. My boss offered me up as a guinea pig. I was working nights at the time, and so it was easy for me to participate in this particular drill because it was a nighttime drill, because it had to be, because it was in a shopping mall. They shut down the shopping mall, and we took it over, and we played basically, you know, paintball gunfight all night long. And one of the things I will never, ever forget is that we are teamed up in a group of 4. We're taking a hallway just as the instructors had taught us. And all of a sudden, the bad guy starts shooting at us. Pop, pop, pop. It's all paintball, you know. And everybody hits the deck or hides behind a potted plant or some architectural wall or something. And the instructor just absolutely loses his shit, just goes ape. Like, what the F are you morons do? Were you not listening? I mean, do you not have ears or do you not have brains? Like, what is wrong with you? Did you remember me telling you to take cover, to hit the deck, to slow down, to stop? Let us go over the basics one more time. You walk down the hallway until you engage and kill the guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Start over.
Right.
That's actually what when I was in ROTC,
go down
they
the
teach
hallway
you to take
again,
cover.
and the same thing happens. Everybody hits the deck.
Yeah, I mean, you know, fighting instinct is difficult, and the truth is that, you know, a potted plant will stop a paintball. It's not necessarily going to stop a round out of an.
So it's not even smart, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But people hit the deck because it's just a natural reaction.
Right.
And
So
they're probably former military, because that's what they teach you in the military.
So you have to train and train and train until you get it, that no matter what, you're going forward. No matter what your brain tells you, your brain stem, right? Because it's deep. There is a deep self-preservation that is embedded in every human being, and you've got to overcome that and do what it is that you've been hired to do, what you're paid to do, what you're trained to do, and you can get there. And we went through similar training in schools and parking lots and all kinds of places annually, for hours and hours and hours to make sure everybody got it. But it is funny to watch the rookies, because you do have to overcome that. And you can do it. Now, in Uvalde, without being able to read anyone's mind, right?
Right.
Oh, you still there?
Yeah.
my technology or yours decided to take a break. Maybe the NSA is curious about what I'm going to say about
They
you.
might have
all
logged
under
off
attack.
right now. They might have got bored, but or either they logged off or logged on. One or
Now
the
we
other.
can talk about the real stuff. The
Yeah,
chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall.
yeah,
When you
exactly.
talk about Uvalde, one of the things that happened is that there were senior people involved. There was a chief involved, and that is the kiss of death. And it's
Politician.
not. It is not appropriate. We always say that the person in charge is whoever gets there first, and the reason for that is because you don't need a second person. The training is that you go in by yourself if you need to. If there's a second person within eyesight, you can go in together. But if you can't physically see, if you can't lay eyes on the second person, you're not waiting for him or her.
Well, I mean, and it's apparent that like if anybody wants to go watch the way to handle one of these, watch the Nashville body cam footage.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I want to say that it was 40 seconds from out of the car till the shooter was down. It might even be less than that. It might have been 30 seconds, but
Right.
incredibly professional, very fearless, on target, fine, clear, boom, boom, down, done.
Right.
And
part of the training, to your point, Michael, part of the training is including running, jogging, toward the target, which is there to remind you and instill in you the sense of urgency.
Right.
If we're teaching you to run toward the target, it's not because we want you to wait outside the door for 15 minutes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're running for a reason.
Get there. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to get there. And
violence of action.
Yeah. And you don't wait for the second person. Now in Uvalde, one of the things that went wrong was there were a bunch of people and you had a senior ranked person. And so for some reason, people were deferring to the chief.
Yeah.
Now, without knowing what was going through the chief's mind either, and I don't want to presume to know what's going through someone else's mind, but
sure,
you are naturally going to feel protective of your people as well as the children. And so I can imagine, I'm not trying to make excuses, and I don't know what was going through his head, but you could imagine being hesitant to send someone else in there.
Right.
Whereas he should have gone in himself if that's his case, right?
Yeah.
I used to tease the youngsters that were my trainees, or, I was frequently the oldest guy around, even though I wasn't in the force that long because I started when I was 49, right? So I used to tease the youngsters, don't be the first through the door. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're 28 years old. Let's be smart about this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've already got my kids through college, right?
Yeah.
It makes no sense for you, Mr. 28-year-old with the two babies at home, to be the first through the door. Don't be stupid. Right. And if that's what the chief was thinking, that he needs to be the first through the door, that doesn't mean you hang out in the hallway. But the other thing that's so dangerous about that is that when you have someone who's senior there in terms of rank, all of a sudden you got people freezing. Oh, I wonder what chief wants me to do. Right. When the whole point of the training is you are independent. You're an army of one.
Yeah.
You get there and your mindset is you stop them. You don't wait for a second, third, or fourth cop to arrive. If you're all arriving at the same time, it's great. We train as a team of 4. If 2 others are there, you go in as a team of 3. If there's one with you, you go in as a pair. And a pair is the right number because it helps to have someone throw open the door and someone to make penetration quickly, as we say, run the rabbit and cause distraction. And the second person through the door is the one that gets the kill shot, right? So it helps to have 2, but it's not worth waiting.
Right.
It's not worth waiting for. And so this mindset is all screwed up. If you're in the hallway having any kind of a conversation, something has gone profoundly wrong.
That's a good way to say it. And so speaking of conversations, these events continue a conversation and have kind of been, further lit a conversation, which is, of course, I see the White House posted almost every 3 days, ban assault weapons, right?
Right.
We see this constantly now being introduced to the zeitgeist. Now, I will admit I live in an echo chamber. I live in a very red southern state that very much loves our guns. I don't meet a single person in the real world that I live in that it agrees to that at all.
Right.
But clearly, there are people out there who do.
I
Mike,
live by them.
so Mike, why do you think, with again, statistically speaking, and we know this from FBI statistics, that long guns in general, not just quote unquote semi-automatic sporting rifles, but long guns in general, only account for roughly 3% of all gun-related homicides?
Right.
Why are they the object of the Democrat Party ire? Why are they the messenger?
I think for a couple of different reasons. To start with, I think it's important to say that there is a tremendous amount of ignorance. So
Right.
a lot of it is just going to be inexplicable. It's just momentum. You know, it's what we've always said. So we're going to continue saying it. There is a piece of that. The
Yep.
other piece of it is that fewer people own them, and so it's politically easier to go after it. And therefore, there is a history and experience in the Democratic Party of being able to successfully ban assault rifles. And so they look to that as something that they can politically get done again, because they've politically gotten it done in the past. Again, just because of the numbers, there's less resistance because not as many people own them. And so it's easier to pound that nail. And so for that reason, there's a lot of it. And then I think it's easy to blame long guns disproportionately because they're disproportionately involved in the mass shootings.
Right.
And the mass shootings are disproportionately paid attention to because they're so dramatic.
Right.
Even though the mass shootings themselves are a very small percentage of total murders, they are what's on TV, right?
Yeah.
And so often the weapon of choice, and we need to talk about this as well, because there's another dopey irony element to it. Frequently, the weapon of choice is a semi-automatic long gun. One of the ironies is that if you were going into a crowded situation, right, you probably wouldn't choose a long gun
No.
as your weapon of choice if you were thinking about this tactically, because a long gun is so easy to lose. It's so easy for someone else to grab. And so I'm not optimistic that one day some community will ban, assault weapons, whether it's a town or a county or a state or, God forbid, the United States. But at some point, someone's going to try this, and they're going to look real dumb when they realize that people can do just as much damage and in some ways are harder to stop when they have a handgun.
Or with any other tool. I mean, I think that it was an odd act of irony. I think the exact day that the shooting happened in Allen, Texas,
Yeah.
the exact day was at El Paso, where a gentleman
Yeah.
drove a van and killed, I think, more people than that. I mean, so
And there were two knifings in the couple of weeks around that period of time too that
Right.
made the news, but were quickly erased from the news because they weren't as sexy politically.
they didn't fit the narrative exactly.
Yeah. So to your point, that absolutely happens, and of course, it's not the lives that the politicians seem to care about, because if they did, they'd be more worried about the one-off
The
shooting.
handguns in Chicago, that's what they would be worried about, right?
That's exactly right. In
Right, yeah.
Chicago and other major cities, and not all in the cities, most of it is in the cities. That's what we would be focused on. And that would drive a conversation toward getting rid of the war on drugs and getting rid of bad housing policy. And it would drive us towards school choice. And it would drive us away from the black markets that foster this shit.
I think you
But-
just nailed it on the head. I think you just nailed it as to why that is the object of the ire, because the
Yeah.
other ones are long political solutions that require nuance and actual discussion to achieve, right?
Yeah.
They don't
it's-
fit on bumper stickers. Yeah.
They don't fit on bumper stickers, and therefore they're not such effective political vehicles. And for this reason, we focus on the mass shootings, and therefore we focus a little bit too much on the.
Yeah, Scientific came with another receipt
no.
saying 20 million AR-15 style weapons in the country, according to National Shooting Sports. I would imagine Scientific, that number is double that.
Easily.
I think it's easily double that. And so
From what they know about, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
I would
That's
think,
what they
possible, and
know
the number
about.
is bigger than it used to be,
I-
but the handgun number is even larger. If I were someone who was uncomfortable being in a school and worried about it, and I don't think that that's irrational, right? I get that. If I were worried and it were either my kids or, I spent a couple of years working as a part-time substitute teacher, which is a weird assignment in Broward County in the public high schools. And trust me, if you show up as an older guy with a little bit of gray hair, they give you all the rough and tumble classes, right?
Right.
So it's quite an experience. But if you had concerns about safety, you should be screaming about your right to carry in the classroom, especially if you're a guy and you can get away with baggy pants every day. And because you can't have it locked up, you can't have it in a purse or something like that around kids. You should be shouting about your right to carry, and you should be shouting about metal detectors, keeping the kids from bringing weapons in, because kids shouldn't have weapons at school. That's what you should be concerned about. So when I hear people talking about about long guns and then secondarily handguns, I know there's something wrong there. And when they talk about that instead of metal detectors, I know there's something wrong there. And when they talk about that, but they don't talk about your right to protect yourself, if I were running a school and a teacher came to me and said, what do you think? I think I should be carrying. I think I should go to a class, learn, be safe. We should probably have a specific class for handling school situations. I think I would say, hell yes. You're telling me you haven't been? That should be our attitude. Is obviously you don't want to be in a situation where you require teachers to carry, because there are a lot of good teachers who just haven't been trained or culturally at odds with that.
Sure.
But I do think you need a certain number of people in these public situations that are carrying at any given moment.
Well, real quick on to that metal detectors thing, because that rang a bell for me. Growing up in Southern California, I know metal detectors have been in high schools, particularly in South LA, since the
For
80s.
some time. Yeah.
Sometime, yeah.
And then when these school shootings, that aren't gang related, like they were in South LA, moved to the suburbs, that's when this stuff started really being talked about. And I'm not trying to add a racial component to this,
Sure.
but the ship sailed a long time ago as far as improving school safety, minus the fact that you just brought up that you should be allowed to protect yourself no matter what the setting is, because it's more than obvious that these events will happen. And to quote a famous hip-hop MC from Southern California named Sugar Free, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right. Yeah. Good
Bingo.
point. Good point.
Bingo.
Yeah. That should be on every school safety poster in every school district. Stay ready, don't get ready.
And we stay ready, right? And let's be honest, even if you were a Democrat, liberal, gun-hating, gun-blaming Democrat who was a parent and your kids are in a public school, even if that were you, somebody stands up in front of, that PTA gathering on a Tuesday night and says, I got to be honest with you, I love your kids. They're not my kids, but I love your kids. And it's a piece of my job, not most of my job, but it's a piece of my job to try to keep them safe in every way.
It's a major component
I carry.
of the job, yeah.
And
I carry. And I think of that as a piece of my responsibility. I stay trained, I stay qualified, I make sure that my weapon works, and I've been trained in the specifics of how to handle school situations. Not that you can train your way into being prepared, right? No. But familiarity and training leads to good action. If that speech is made in front of any group of parents, you got to be impressed.
Right. Yeah.
There is an ethical component. There's a safety component. That is real. That is real when it's your kid and it's all of a sudden it's not so political. Say what you will about your rules and your laws and your ordinances and what you want to tell your friends over lunch the next day. The truth of the matter is there is not a parent alive who wouldn't do anything to keep their kids safe.
100%.
And if that means, Mr. Matthews is going to carry in math class, you know what?
Mr. Matthews' class will be the safest class in the school. And
all of a sudden, I'm okay with Mr. Matthews, and I want my kid taking geometry, even if she didn't want to.
So, little anecdote, though. So, I'm from Louisiana, and during Katrina 2005, the National Guard rounded a bunch of firearms up from people, okay?
Yeah.
They came through and took them, but they didn't get all of them, right? First of all, there was a lot of smart people who hid a bunch of them, okay?
Right.
They came by, and because you got these 18-year-old kids coming saying, "Hey, excuse me, Mr. Termont, do you have any guns?" "Yeah, here's this old Stevens shotgun I got. It's the only one I got. Sorry." And they gave it over, and the guy moves to the next door. And so, anecdotally speaking, in several neighborhoods, there was a couple people that have, had 4 or 5 or 6 guns that they kind of hid apart. And people were coming and saying, "Hey, do you have a gun that I can have?" Because when things really go down, nobody is a gun hater when they really need one.
Nope.
Nobody is when they
That's
really need one. If the bad guy's at the door busting it through and I have 2 firearms and I said, "I have one, ma'am, I'm willing to give you one too. Do you want one?" "Oh no, I hate guns." "No, give me the damn gun." That's what's
you're
really
exactly right.
What's
All
really
of a
going
sudden,
to happen?
she's a zombie killer.
Yeah. All of a sudden, she's not so anti-gun anymore. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say, no way on hell would I be a math teacher. I would be a history teacher.
Okay.
But no way. Yeah, I hated geometry.
Marcus,
I feel like I'm insulting Mike right now by saying I don't like math.
I envision that you would be like a gym teacher. Like I had a gym teacher named Mr. Haynes who was a straight gangster. Like this dude, like he put the fear of God in us in like kindergarten. This is back in like the Tyson days when Tyson would fight. And you know how some teachers would like come in and they put on like they wheel in the TV on the cart and that was the sign they didn't want to work. He'd wheel in the TV and he'd play like boxing VHSs. He'd be like, "Everybody be quiet."
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's what public schools. I don't know if it was a public school or not, but
it was public school.
They need to go back to that,
dude. I'm telling you, I didn't have. There was nobody. I watched that Key and Peele episode, with Substitute Garvey, or whatever it was. Yeah, and I had so many teachers like that, and nobody acted up. Like, I mean, you stayed in. You knew better. You knew better. And today I see some of these videos from classrooms, Mike, where these kids are screaming at the teacher and doing this, and it wouldn't fly. In 1990s Louisiana, 1980s Louisiana, that kid would have gotten his ass.
Well, I'll tell you, it didn't fly when I got the assignment either. We had classes that were so notorious that I once had a group. It was a math class completely coincidentally. Doesn't matter. It was random, right? And, I got them finally. I'll tell you how I did it, but I'll tell you at the end of the story. They're finally sitting there doing their, what was supposed to have been their homework, but at least they're doing something. They're sitting there working on their little 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with math problems on it. And the room is quiet. And a teacher not from the hallway, but from the adjoining classroom comes in and says, "Oh, I thought it was empty. Why is it quiet in here? It's never quiet at 2 p.m. And by the way, who are you?" Right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I'm the substitute." And she says, "Well, how'd you get him to be quiet?" And I explained, and I'll tell you too. I didn't let him in the classroom. Everyone had to line up in the hallway. And we did this frequently. Everyone lines up in the hallway. "Hi, I'm Mike Termont. You will call me Mike, and you will get into the room when you agree to my 2 rules." You say to the first kid, "I got 2 rules. You sit down and you shut up." "What are the 2 rules?" And he says, "I got to sit down. I got to shut up." "All right, you go in." Next kid, "I got 2 rules.
There you go.
You got to sit down. You got to shut up." If he giggles, he goes to the back of the line. If he can't remember them, he goes to the back of the line. If he gives me lip or attitude, he goes to the back of the line. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes to get in that room, right? Yeah. They get in the room, they start talking, I throw them out. and I throw them out because I've only got 2 rules. How can you not remember my 2 rules?
Yeah.
This is not complicated. I designed this, for my own level. I wouldn't remember more than 2 rules. I can't enforce more than 2 rules. You got to sit down. You got to shut up. This isn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
So we're
That's
sending
awesome.
people to the principal's office, but they finally settle down. And you got to let them know, I respect you. I love you. I'm here because I respect you and I love you and I love your future and I give a damn. But this is not a democracy. I'm in charge. You got to sit down, you shut up, or this whole program falls apart. That's what this is all about. You got to be honest with them. You got to be candid. And to do anything else, just like political pandering, it's unethical. We're lying to people when we pander to them.
Right.
If you tell students it's okay to walk around and make noise in a learning environment, you're lying to them. That's not ethical. And when Democrats tell you it's okay to keep spending money on entitlement programs, they're lying to you. They're either actually morons or they're dishonest. And I realize with some politicians, it's a gray area, right? When the Republicans tell you that the only way to run foreign policy is to project military hegemony around the world with hundreds of foreign bases so that we can suppress the Chinese and the Russians, they are lying to
They're
you.
lying to you. Yeah.
That's not ethical. And so, I'm a big believer, and you're right to answer the question you had a half an hour ago. These issues are complicated, but the ethics behind them we can all relate to. And I think the American public is ready to hear that message, which will differentiate us from the Republicans and Democrats. That's the only way to take advantage of the opportunity in 2024.
That's a great place to. First off, that's well said. It is unifying. And that really is. That's a great bow to put on everything. Is that we might disagree on the minutia, but we can probably all agree on the ethics. And so let's start there and work on the minutia second. I like that, Mike. I really do. So, Mike, we're coming up here on an hour and 5 minutes. We're a little over the time of the podcast.
Yeah.
Give everyone the where can they find you on social media?
No.
Okay, no. All right, fine. Don't find Mike on social media.
No, that's it.
Yeah, where can they find your campaign?
If you can't find us, then we just don't deserve it. Look, you can go to a couple different places. You can go to MikeTermott.com, which is tricky because you'd have to spell it right.
Right.
MikeTermaat.com. You can go to MikeTermott.com.
3 words.
Yeah. Well, you got to get rid of all the spaces, right?
Yeah,
One word on the internet, Marcus.
Yeah.
My bad. No, I'm the only IT professional here. I can say 3 damn words.
When you guys hang up, Michael, you'll have to explain 1995 to Marcus.
I got a nice chair, by the way.
HTTP colon.
Not in those days. It was www.
Yeah, exactly. On your AOL.com.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Hey, don't pick on my AOL, okay, buddy?
Are you still on AOL?
No, I'm not. But
no,
those are the days.
So
Mike's going to have some jokes for you.
MikeTermott.com. Find his campaign there.
Or goldnewdeal.org.
Goldnewdeal.org.
Gold New Deal is our platform. It's got its own URL. That's how important it is.
Okay.
It's at goldnewdeal.org, not goldnewdeal.com, but goldnewdeal.org. And I got to tell you that my real contact information is there. That's actually my cell phone number, my real email address. If anyone wants to drop me a text, I would love to have a telephone conversation. I might not answer if I don't recognize your weird number.
I can validate this. Mike attended the Arkansas LP convention, and I came up to him afterwards, shook his hand, told him for attending, and I told him that, hey, sometimes I host a radio show here in Little Rock, and I would like his contact information to, as we get closer to the election, I like to have all the LP, hopefuls on that show. And I said, I need your cell phone number. And he handed me a card and he said, this is my real cell phone number. So I can tell you that he's being honest.
I can vouch for it too. I called him yesterday and he answered.
Yeah, Marcus calls it. He doesn't trust anybody. He actually calls the damn number.
I told you I could be a tad bit anal.
Marcus is Gen X, man. He's still Marcus.
No, he called.
Yeah,
first thing out of his mouth. Where's my damn money?
Well, I was hoping that was the reparations hotline, but I got Mike Termott instead.
It's not. It's not. I
tried,
can tell you that right now.
Hey, I'm gonna get my money. Like I said,
I've told Marcus before. If the
Y'all better
reparations come through,
where my money is.
don't forget me, Marcus. They start writing those $1.2 million checks.
Marcus
Just
is in
drop me a little.
California. He's better set up than you are.
Yeah, he is.
Well, I'm going to come see both. Once I get Gavin Newsom $1.2 million, I'm coming to see both of you guys. I'm going to take you out to dinner.
All right.
You guys are both getting a salad. I'm getting the steak. Because, I don't know if you're worth my money just yet. We got to meet in person. I got to shake your hand.
But listen, you got to come out to my house out in the middle of nowhere, Virginia.
That's not going to happen.
And you can ride in the back of the pickup truck with the 40 caliber, okay?
Oh, there you go. You wouldn't ride in the back of the pickup truck with a 40 cal, Marcus?
I do. My first pistol was a 40 cal, but if I'm going to the backwoods of a 50 cal, a Maat, hell yeah. If I'm going to the backwoods of Virginia,
40 is what I carry, right? The real deal. You got to ride in the back of the pickup truck. The 10-year-old Silverado with the extra gasoline. We're ready to go.
There you go.
I would trust you on in that regard. My family's from Alabama, the backwoods of Alabama, so we have some stories to tell about our experiences. But you know what? I place my trust in Mike Termont, not only as a good friend, but as a possible candidate for president of the United States. And
there you go, man.
We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, and this has been a great broadcast. Mike, thanks so much for coming on.
You guys have a great show. I look forward to hanging out with you guys again in the future.
We will have you back on. And
we have to get the third round in about 3 months.
Yeah, definitely. We want to keep having you back on. We got to keep this going all the way to convention and stop in and talk to all you guys because it's an enjoyable conversation. And I think it's important for people to understand the angles at which we're all talking about this stuff. So really, Mike, again, thank you so much for making the appearance tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a great joy to be with you.
Marcus and I have sign off this show every time the exact same way. Marcus, this time you say the first part, I say the second part, and we'll sign us off.
To my fellow Americans, live free
or die. This has been another episode of the Black Powder Podcast. Take us offline, Marcus.
Peace.
Peace.